Hello, welcome back to Math Time with Professor Prime, and I'm your host as always, Professor Prime. So, today we're going to talk about math and One Punch Man. So, I'm going to have fun with that. We're going to talk about One Punch Man. We're going to talk about how math is used both in universe and in the meta sense. The focus will be on anime, but we'll talk about other elements of One Punch Man. Yeah, so there will absolutely be spoilers. I'm not going to hold back. I'm going to have fun with things. And yeah, I'll talk about everything I just said as well as why I like the series and how I feel about it in general, considering that, right? Um, so yeah, spoilers ahead for everything One Punch Man. Let's get into it. So with One Punch Man, it follows Saitama, right, and his journeys throughout his crazy world. There are monsters, there are aliens, there are super strong humans. A lot of chaos going on at any moment, and that kind of shapes that world, right? Because the idea is like, okay, at some point, more monsters started popping up, right? And so some rich dude creates the Hero Association, and that's where a lot of the heroes that we see in the series are coming from. And they have a class system with that, as well as a disaster level system, and we'll get into all of that, right? And no matter whether we're talking about that or the fights in the series or it's like Saitama's training, and so many other things, we're dealing with math. And I'm excited about that. It's also just a really fun series and funny, oftentimes funny. And oh man, the Dragon Ball influences are clear, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I dig Dragon Ball, but that idea of like blending comedy and action, and then some of the ways that they do it in One Punch Man is definitely reminiscent of Dragon Ball. And I can't imagine that's an accident. Like, I mean, there's a character really early on that looks like Piccolo, so take from that what you will. um, but yeah, so the idea is you have this world, you have like the Heroes Association, and not everyone that's super strong is going to be part of that association, but there are a lot of people, hundreds of people that are employed, yeah, employed by that organization. And there's caveats and catches to all of that, right? But there's math in the way that it's run and the funding and then all that, right? So if we back it up a little bit, so we have that general idea, a lot of monsters, a lot of bad people, and then we have the hero associations, which some people are actually heroic, but some of them are also bad people. We'll get into that too. And then with Saitama, like his whole thing is he was a dude who was like bummed out, looking for a job, and he runs into a kid, and the kid, did something stupid to a monster, Craplante. Such a wonderful name. And so Saitama saves the kid after reflecting on his wishes when he was a kid to become a hero. And then he dedicates 3 years of his life to training after he saves that kid, which is already an impressive feat on his own, considering, as far as we know, he didn't have any combat experience and stuff like that, right? Before that moment. So in any case, let's talk about that training, and then we're gonna go further down the rabbit hole, so to speak, with Saitama's training, right? Uh, we don't know for sure what he did, but we know what he says that he did. And he might have done it, but there might have been more play. But you'll see what I mean if you don't already know. So there's a point where Saitama describes what he did, like he reveals the big secret, and so he says, 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, a 10-kilometer run, and he did this each day for 3 years while also eating 3 meals a day. And sometimes, in the morning, like something as simple as a banana did the trick, right? He also didn't use heat in the winter or air conditioning in the summer, which also probably really lowered his electricity bill. I'm sorry, that was bad. But still, it must have. But anyway, so he says that he did all those things, and that's why he has the phenomenal strength that he does. Because, as we going through the series, we see that he can defeat anyone in one punch. And yes, there are some cases where we see him take more than one punch, but I want to be clear about something. It's also heavily indicated that he could have done it in one punch if he wanted to in those cases. Um, but yeah, so everything at his guide about his strength training, that will get you strong. Yeah, that will get you real strong. That'll get you very much conditioned, but it will not get you to be OP like Saitama is. And like, to the series' credit, people know that. That's part of the joke. People are like, "There's no way," and so I think it's a thing where it's either like he's not as human as you may think, or it could be that he had this latent potential all along, and training that vigorously, while it would have done wonders for regular people, it does a whole lot more for him. But I'm sure you can come up with your own theories. But the whole point is like, if he's honest about what he said, that might be like, what he thinks the source of his power is just that intense training. But it's like, yeah, it gets crazy. Also, I wanted to point out that like he said about a year and a half into that training, he went bald, and that's how he knew the training was paying off. In any case, it's an interesting series because like, right, by the time that we're introduced to like Saitama, it's like he's bored. You know, he got strong like he wanted to. He became a hero, but he became so strong that nothing and no one really posed a threat to him. And so that's like where we are at the start of the series, right? We see where he is at this point. We see what led up to it, and we see how his actions, his strength, his speed, his power, how that impacts people around him, both good and evil. Oftentimes, he's inspiring people to get better. And sometimes, as we see later in the series, what they might think may be better may be dangerous for everyone, right? Um, in any case, so yeah, that's the basic premise. You have like Saitama and his journeys, and eventually he meets Genos, and they join the Hero Association. And so you have their journey. Meanwhile, you have everything that everyone else is doing and how they all connect. And it ends up being a really fun ride so far. For the purposes of this video, right, like I'm focusing on the anime, but it's like we're saying that there's a lot of history with One Punch Man even before you get to the anime, right? The original webcomic came out in 2009. Then 3 years later, in 2012, you get a manga remake of that webcomic, right? And then 3 years later after that, you get the anime adaptation of One Punch Man, which, for the record, 10 years later, at the time of recording, 2025, it is actually still going because that first season came out in 2015. That second season came out in like 2019, and this year, 2025, is when the third season is supposed to come out. Um, so it's pretty crazy because like so far, just like 24 episodes, and I imagine like the third season will probably be 12 episodes as well, but who knows? It's been a while, so maybe they've been cooking up even more. Who knows, right? But there's math and all that too, right? And we'll get into that more. But it's a wild thing where so far you got two seasons with a third one coming, and it's been split between two studios, right? Because they had like that first season was produced by like a Madhouse, and then that second one and the third one, it's all produced by like a JC staff, right? Those two studios. I'm sorry, my eye is like bothering me. Um, but before getting into that more meta side of things, like diving deeper, let's go back into the world. Okay, so you have the Hero Association, and like I said, right, it's an organization set up by a millionaire, and they have a class system. And with that class system, you have S, A, B, and C, right? And there are many determining factors of like how you're moving up in those ranks and how they're determined in the first place. But the idea is, they're largely organized by the type of threat level they can handle, how strong they are, how fast they are, how skilled, and stuff like that, right? But sometimes they get it wrong, and I think that's fascinating because like we have this idea of power scaling, right? And you don't always see the numbers directly with that in terms of like what you would see with like Dragon Ball Z, like in the beginning of that. But it's very much there, and like everyone is ranked, so you have math all up in that, right? Because it's like, hey, we're ranking these people. They all have their ranks, and that rank is supposed to indicate something. And sometimes, yes, like you might have a S class person, right? And it's like, oh yeah, they deserve that title. And then you might have someone who doesn't, and we'll get into that. Um, but the idea is, you have math used to rank these people, and math and the rankings themselves. But like, you might be given faulty data, or it just might be sketchy in how things are determined in the first place, right? So not only do you have these ideas of like the heroes and how they're ranked, but you also have like the disasters being ranked, right? Because like you have wolf, tiger, demon, dragon, and god. So you have these like five disaster level for like threats, right? Um, and the way those are divided is they're determined by like the amount of damage that's pretty much being done. So you might like have an idea like, hey, this level of threat is like, we don't know for sure, but it's like it might be a minor threat. And then you might have something like, it's like, hey, this is a threat to a large amount of people. And then you might be like, oh, well, hey, this is a threat to a large amount of people plus the city as a whole. And like, hey, maybe this is a threat to multiple cities, which like with like a crazy amount of people, right? And then you might have the idea, once you get to that highest level tier, where it's like, hey, this is a threat to like literally everyone on the planet, right? Like it's a threat to all of humanity. It's a threat to the entire world. So you have like the class system for the heroes, and you have the disaster threat for like the villains and natural disasters and stuff like that, right? So there's math in those classifications and what they indicate and what they are, right? And like I said, some things are faulty because like take King. Like, and remember, I said spoilers are hit, so uh here we are to get into that a bit further. King is an S class hero. That's how he's ranked. But it's revealed in the series that he's really not. Like he is ranked S, but he's not actually that strong, right? Like most of the feats he's known for doing are feats that Saitama has actually done. And so when people are like he's the strongest person in the world, they really mean Saitama. They just don't know it, which is crazy. It's wild, right? And so speaking of Saitama, let's talk about his ranking. And remember, like I'm focusing on the anime, so it's like there's definitely gonna be stuff that pops up in the other material that we're not there yet in the anime. But if we focus on that, right, like by the end of like the two seasons that we see in anime, right, like he's still B class level like hero, right? Or God, I don't think he got ranked to A, but either way, like he starts off as C, which is crazy, right? But let's talk about that. So like how to when you go to register to be a hero in this world, there is a physical component. And Saitama aces that in a crazy way, highest scores they've ever seen. And there's math and all of that. Math and like the strength and speed that it takes and them measuring that and whether they're gonna like take that information and say like, oh well maybe it was an error, or they're like, oh crap, no, this is accurate and go with it, right? So with Saitama, he's crazy strong, and no one thinks to keep an eye on him despite that, right? And so why is he C class? Where Genos, when he entered, he was already S class, right? Like he enters, he passes everything, and this that. It's because like there's a physical component, but then there's the written exam, which Saitama didn't do well on, so he was ranked C, despite his like crazy strength. And again, no one in that association at that time decided to watch them as carefully as they could. So in any case, right, you have hundreds of heroes. You have these four class systems, and for Class C, it gets interesting because you actually do have to have a quota fulfilled for heroic duties. You have to do that weekly, or else you're off the registry. So you have to go find people to help. And so it gets pretty crazy. And throughout the series, we see like again, like then sometimes the rankings don't actually hold up because they're given like faulty information, or they weren't measuring things as well as they could, or they weren't paying as much attention as they could or should, right? And so throughout the series, right, we see like everyone getting stronger. Like Saitama, when we're introduced to him, like he's done his training, right? He's not really getting stronger because like he doesn't really have the challenge and he's bored out of his mind. But there's a lot of people that actually come across him and they see his strength, they see his speed, they see how effortless it is for him to fight someone. They see the kinds of challenges that he's facing, and that makes them want to do better. And so it's like it's cool to me because there's math not only in the Hero Association and their class system for heroes, their disaster level like system. There's not just math in that, but math in how it came about in the first place, right? Math in the heroes, math in how they're ranked, math in what they do, whether it's saving people from a disaster or by taking them out of town, changing the location, or like taking a threat head on. Right, there's math in that, and there's math in the fighting, and math in the choreography behind the fighting, and it can get pretty crazy. So it's like in universe, and then like on our ends, and like with the characters in the universe, everyone's power scaling, and there's math all up in that, right? Because the idea is like, okay, well, you might be going by feats and stuff, right? You might be like, okay, well, I see that this person they're able to, move this fast, move that fast, lift this heavy thing, lift that heavy thing, take on people that we already know is strong, apply this much force to this punch and that punch, and do a bunch of other crazy things and feats. But no matter how you cut it, right? Like whether we're talking about the Hero Association and them ranking their people like by power scaling, or the characters deciding how they would do in combat and power scaling, or us the viewers seeing how characters stack up, right? We're all power scaling. We're all using math in action. You can't really get around it in the fighting anime. And then there's math in the in the fights themselves, right? Um, because you have this idea that you have just like on a basic fighting level, you have things to consider like your strength, your speed, your opponent's strength, your opponent's speed, like your location, their location, how you're moving, how they're moving, and the change in position, the change in speed, and all that good stuff. And you're seeing how you stack up versus how they stack up. And if you're a hero and you're actually paying attention to the environment, you're going to try to avoid collateral damage while also trying to not die, right? And there's math and all that. And I think that's cool. And then in this universe, we do have power. So like you might not know your opponent's power, so you have to keep an eye out for that. Or maybe you do, and you're trying to figure out the limitation of the powers, right? And we see like a large variety in terms of powers. But I want to take this time to talk about Tornado, and I guess like by her anyone who is an expert in that universe, like Blizzard, her sister, is also one. But like Tornado is an awesome character, cool. Like despite her attitude sometimes, like I like that character, and she does like crazy feats. Like she earns that S rank and then some. But again, like not everyone in that S rank deserves it. But we do get to see like more of them and what they do in that second season, because that first season it is like focused largely around like Saitama and how people were interacting with him, right? And we get to see different elements of different characters, but we see even more of them with that next step in the story, right? In any case, there's a lot of math, and I dig that, and just like other ways that we do it in the real world, because everyone is working, everyone's putting their time, their energy, and effort into this task, that task, and just trying to survive. And there's math in that, and then in the meta sense, and we've talked about it a little bit, but the idea is like right, there's not only math and the fights in terms of the universe, but how they're animated, right? Like blow for blow, the choreography, all that is math, right? Because you have these characters and they have to be drawn in this way and that way, this angle, that position, that this position, that position. I'm sorry, that was redundant. But the idea is like, right, you're looking at the angles they have to be at, you're looking at the positions they have to be at, you're looking at how to convey speed, and you're dealing with the animation, you're dealing with how the characters have to look in this frame or that frame, and just having it all flow together so you get that idea of movement. And all it takes time, and all it takes money, and all it takes effort. While we're here and we're also talking about animation, there's a very weird thing I noticed with One Punch Man where some people will like talk about the animation in the second one not being as good in the first season, but I've seen both. The animation in the second season isn't bad. It's different from the first. If you're paying attention, you can see that it's different, but not necessarily worse. They both do some incredible things, and I think that's worth saying. So, like, if you just saw like season one of One Punch Man, you should go see the second season. There's a lot to like. Now, if you watch the first season and you're like, hey, it felt like a complete story, that's very fair because it very much does. then I get you wanting to not continue, but just know that there is some more good there. And I would say with the second season, it doesn't end on a super cliffhanger, but there are definitely things that are unresolved where it's like, hey, the third season is clear that needs to resolve a lot of things. And then it's like, I don't know if they go further than that, right? Um, but my whole point is that, like, it's kind of a crazy thing because, right, like math is everywhere and in everything. And it is everything, and that's just how our world is structured. When we deal with math in academic sense, we're just figuring out ways to talk about that. And what I find interesting is, when someone's creating like a webcomic or a manga or an anime, right? They're taking, they're creating a world. They're taking, what we figured out, and they're like, well, how can I construct this system? How can I construct this world? So we have this world of ours, that it has some bad parts, but it is wonderful in a sense. And we have people sometimes like working with each other, making worlds upon worlds upon worlds. And it's all cool because you have to think about how things are going to work in that world, and I think that's awesome. And all of that is math. Now I don't think I really mentioned the video game adaptation in this video, and I'm not gonna go like too far in it now. But one of the things that I did want to mention about it is there is a video game, One Punch Man, a hero nobody knows, and I will be doing a separate video on that. And oh, there's math in that. Yeah. All right. So I'll be talking about that, and that'll be coming out in the near future. If you watch this one, there's a good chance that that one will be out by the time you're finished watching this one. So I'll see you in the future. Professor Prime out.